Hi everyone. So almost 3 months has been passed when lockdown has been imposed to curb this pandemic, which we call more frequently either as COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2. So dear friend, the word normal is no more a normal thing because this pandemic has affected everybody's life like never before. And the word normal is being now replaced by some very new terms like social distancing, quarantine, and so on. And all this situation is the outcome of this deadly pandemic which we all are facing, and we had to accept it as a challenge. So my today's topic of this conference is focused around the same pandemic, SARS-CoV, because since last 2 months, along with my genomic work which I am conducting here on a different species, salmon, Atlantic fish, I am also analyzing this genome which is being deposited from India. So I will be talking about what is the present scenario of this outbreak in the light of genomics. So dear friends, really we are facing a very hard time, and if we see the recent happening all across the world, including our country India, the things are reeling towards normalcy. But one thing is very important to remember: though we are moving our life or putting our life back on the track, but one should not forget about the organism which is responsible for this situation, a virus, because microorganism to which category this virus belong, they have some very peculiar and special characteristic feature that they do not stop at the frontiers. So what I personally believe is that as the microorganism or the organism do not stop at the frontier, so it is the responsibility of the researcher, all the stakeholders, not to stop here, considering that now everything is normal, or now in other words you can say all is right or all is okay, because this bacteria or viruses, they have the feature of lag period. They undergo lag period, and after, with lag means that they stop dividing or multiplying. Okay, and after that, their main reason to that put a organism, especially microorganism, under the lag period, or we call as a dormant phase. That may be unfavorable conditions, lack of nutrients, and so on. So under this condition, nature has given them a very special property that they undergo dormancy. And this dormancy doesn't mean that they are being eradicated. So this is very important to curb this disease. So I will now move to my other slides to discuss how SARS-CoV pandemic is uh, being revealed or being studied using genomics technology. From now, you won't see me, you can only listen me just to enhance the better visibility of my text on the slides. So now let's discuss why genomics is important to study or to tackle COVID-19 outbreak. So the basic difference is that why we require genomics is that there's a big difference lies in genetic and genomics, because genetic is the study of a single gene or partial gene or maybe two or three, while genomic the study of entire set of genes that represent an organism. So genomic has, of course, more information compared to genetics, or you can say in other words, genetics is just a tip of the iceberg, while genomics is what that lie underneath. So this is the basic difference, that why the information which is being obtained or gathered from genomic is very, very huge, enormous. And because genetics has some limitations, by when you sequence a single gene, it is not possible to sequence beyond 1.5 kb or 1500 base pair using conventional PCR. But genomics enable you to sequence the entire genome. So there, the sequencing or the length is not a limit. While in genetics, where conventional PCR is being used, the length matters. So that's why genetics is almost now being replaced by genomics, because the enormous information genomics provide. And second thing, that why we require this genomic data, because in most of the country, including our country India, now the lockdown is being eased, okay, and the people are being moving, okay. So as I said earlier, even if we are lifting the lockdowns, it doesn't mean that the disease has gone, because control is one thing and eradication is another thing. So in the second phase, when the lockdown is being removed, so this genomic data can be used very effectively to track the origin and the event of community transmission. So, so community transmission means where it is difficult to track the origin of the disease. So as I said, because the genomic has very huge information, so we can use that information to track the origin as well as the event of this community transmission, because genetic is one or two gene, while genomic is the entire set. Even one or two is missing, you have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. And third reason is that, as I already discussed, it become more important after the release of lockdown, when people start moving and mingling with each other. And the first and another reason is the data which is obtained from genomic can be used to fill the gaps which arise either due to sampling error, lack of history, or limited sampling. Sampling error means when there is some bias sampling is being done, because sampling is very important. Okay? If sampling is done with a focus on particular area and not including the sample from the other region, that also create a lot of chaos in the data, and that may mislead the uh, disease spread. Another is lack of history. We don't know the origin from where the sample come out. So by analyzing the whole genome, you can reconnect or connect these uh, individual and track their history. And another is limited sampling. If because this is happening in some part, okay, there are reports that there are not enough sampling is being done or not enough people are being tested. That can also be find out by using this genomic data and then find out uh, where this missing information, how to fill that gap. That we will discuss as we go on. So you can say genomics has hugely transformed the field of biological sciences by allowing rapid sequencing of genome. You will be surprised to know that when Human Genome Project, commonly called as HGP, was launched and where millions of dollars were spent by all major countries, and the sequencing exercise is considered as the second most important exercise in science after the landing of human on moon. So it was such a big breakthrough in the field of science that 3.2 billion base pair of human genome was sequenced and millions of dollars were spent, and it was all public or publicly funded project. But what is interesting is that today it is possible to sequence the individual genome with just 6 lakhs Indian rupees. So 6 lakh rupees, I'm not talking about dollar. So if you want to sequence your whole genome, you can, if you are ready to pay 6 lakh, you can sequence your whole genome in just 6 lakh rupees. So question arises, from where this huge transformation comes out. So the main reason is these high throughput technologies. These are the high throughput technologies which are mainly revolutionized the field of genome sequencing, and this high throughput technologies, they are the technologies which are more mainly related to the IT, information technology, or you can say more specifically to the computational part, or you can say chip technology. So that's why the concept of lab to chip has emerged. So this is the most commonly used whole genome sequencing machine called as Illumina. It's a company, it's a platform, okay. And so Illumina is the platform that is being used to sequence genome. There are some other methods are also there, but Illumina is the more uh, preferred worldwide. And another very interesting thing that has come out recently is called as nanopore sequencing. Nanopore is so small that it's just like your flash drive or pen drive, we call it. You can connect it to the your laptop using a USB, but only limitation is that it it can be used only for small genome like uh, bacteria and viruses. So yes, COVID genome is very small too, only 29,000 base pair. So it's an ideal tool to use this nanopore for uh, COVID genome sequencing. You can see in the picture. Only you have to drop the genomic DNA on the chip and connect it to the laptop, and the sequencing goes on, and you have huge data of in the form of uh, gigabyte. That is all raw data that you have to analyze further using the, the computational field. So, how we plan our study? We have not done any sequencing of any viruses because uh, only specific labs are allowed to do virus
related work because of the great health hazard associated with these virus viruses. So there are four levels of labs that allow to deal with viral research. Level 1, 2, 3, and 4. If I am not wrong, this SARS-CoV belongs to the highest level now, level 4 lab. The lab which are allowed to do very or to handle very dangerous viruses like Ebola and so on. So what we did, we obtained the genome of the SARS-CoV deposit from India in the GISAID public database. So GISAID is a very important database and become very famous with the emergence of this COVID-19 outbreak. GISAID is a public database founded by a non-profit organization with its headquarters in Munich, Germany. So it is being formed mainly by the initiative taken by the G20 nations, and along with the COVID-19 genome, this GISAID also harbor genome from other viruses related with flu. So this is a fantastic database or repository of influenza viruses. So GISAID is a one global science initiative. So you can see here there are roughly 49,000 viral genome are currently available in the GISAID only for COVID, and so this is 49,000 genomes. So this is a very huge repository, and this is available freely for everybody to download. Only thing is that you have to acknowledge it when you publish anything. So we obtained this genomic information of SARS-CoV from this database. So let's move to the next one. So what we did, we downloaded 286 whole genome of SARS-CoV deposited from India in the GISAID database till May 2020. So aligning this genome is one of the biggest challenge in the analysis because each genome of the SARS-CoV is 29 kb. I mean 29,000 base pair long. So aligning 286 genome where each genome is 29 kb is not a very straightforward method. So you are depend and rely on a very high computation or high end computers. And for this alignment, we use the CIDAR computation facility available at Toronto, Canada, and we use one special program called a muscle. So I would like to share some thing with you that there are people who are interested to do genome analysis work. One of the very important thing is that if you are taking this initiative, you don't have to rely only on the Windows operating system because Windows operating system is not going to help you in this. You require Unix or more specifically Linux. You can see that this black box. So this is the one window of this CIDAR high competition facility which I'm using uh, here along with my co-workers. So this is a very high capacity or high computation facility having more than 1000 GB of RAM and lot of cloud storage. So alignment of genome is very uh, important step. The rest of the things are not that important, but aligning It's one of the biggest challenge. So once you align your genome, then you can move on to your downstream analysis. So after aligning the all 286 genome, our next step was to analyze this aligned sequence information, and we call this as phylogenomic or phylogenetics. Phylogenetic is when you are only restricting to a gene, while genomic when you are taking into account the whole genome. So our next step was to analyze this whole genome information to understand their relationship. Okay, so after aligning this 286 genome, what we found that there are only 138 unique haplotypes out of 286. Are you getting me? There were 286 whole genome, but after aligning, only we could recognize that there are only 138 haplotypes, while rest of the genome were similar. So here I would like to clarify one thing. What is what is what do you mean by haplotype? Because this is very confusing term for some people. So let's discuss what is a haplotype. So this is haplotype 1 or one genome where you have a mutation at 1, 2, and 3. This is sample 1. In sample 1, or you can say genome 1, you have mutation at this position 1, 2, 3. In sample 2, you have mutation at 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is in sample 2. In sample 3, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is your sample 3 or genome 3. So you can see they have similarity. S1, S2, and S3, they have similarity, but they are unique. Okay, because S1 do not have a mutation at fourth position, while S3 do not have mutation. Sorry, S1 do not have mutation at 4 and 5. So all these three are unique. So after aligning, we find that there were 138 haplotypes. So these haplotypes are very important. We analyze only this haplotype. We not analyze the other genome because there are the repetitions. It is possible that there are 7, 9 haplotypes of S1 type. There may be some 50 haplotype that belong to S2, or there may be some 32 haplotype that belongs to S3. I hope this clarify what haplotype means, because in all our analysis we have not used the sequences or genome. We only use the haplotype which were unique. So after the after we have unique 138 haplotype in our hand, we move to the next step, which is the phylogenetic network, which is a very powerful algorithm developed by Dr. Rohel in 1999, the year when I was doing my PhD. Okay, so this algorithm was developed by a German uh, mathematician. This is very important that this is algorithm is the widely used algorithm in now in evolutionary and population genetics, and which is developed by applied mathematician, and that explain you how these mutations are related. Because once you calculated the haplotype, because this haplotype, as I mentioned here, they all have some mutations positions, okay, at you can see here. So these are very significant because we have now you have to relate these mutations with compared to the other samples. So those who are related Okay, accommodating mutations, you can build a network and find out their relationship. So the main task of this phylogenomic is to understand the relationship between these samples or genome to know how they are being related. Let's move to the next slide. Oh, then you can see that the whole 286 whole genome information is being mapped to a single slide, which we call it as phylogenomic network. So this is the crux of the study. The entire 286 whole genome information is being narrowed down to 130 haplotype, and all these 130 haplotype they are put on a single slide in the form of small varying diameter circle. So even a layman can understand this relationship, which is very difficult to know otherwise. You can see here all these different colors represent different countries. The historical sequence from outbreak sequence from China is here in the yellow. You can see here. Okay, while this color fluorescence represent Gujarat, this saffron represent Telangana, and this pink represent Delhi, green Tamil Nadu, and yes, Maharashtra represented by this violet color. Okay, so all these color represent different states of India. So what we speculate out from this whole network, that there are two main clusters are there, which we call it as cluster A. You can see here cluster A and cluster B. This is the cluster. This is the cluster A here, and this cluster B. These are the two main cluster, which we call it as ancestral cluster, because they are accumulating or harboring many related haplotypes. So here one thing, another terminology come, that's called as haplogroup. So similar haplotype, they are pulled together to form a haplogroup. You can see these two A and B are basically two haplogroup which further nested the similar haplotypes. So they are there are two haplogroup which are ancestral A and B. But what is the major difference between these two haplogroup or two ancestral node is that this node B and A, these are the two nodes, both are connected to the Wuhan outbreak sequence. You can see here. Okay, this is the Wuhan outbreak sequence represented by yellow color. One thing, what is there in the number inside the circle represent the number of haplotype. Most of the haplotype are represented by number one, means that there is only one haplotype of this type. You can see here, this is bigger circle which represent there are three haplotypes of this kind. Are you getting me? The bigger haplogroup, the biggest haplogroup has 30 haplotypes. That's why it is called as uh, ancestral cluster, because it's further nesting similar haplotype to form a bigger haplotype. So B haplogroup has 30 haplotypes, while A haplogroup bear 13 haplotypes. So as I said, both A and B are the major haplogroup which has ancestral position, and both are connected to this Wuhan sequence. But the haplogroup A is connected to this Wuhan sequence by a single median vector. while you can see here, this is the Wuhan and this is the median vector. The median vector is regarded as the unsampled or extinct individual in biological network. So these black dots all represent the median vectors. It means that either that information is missing or that individual become extinct. So I said my previous slide that genomic information can be used to track the origin as well as to find out the missing information or unsampling or bias sampling. So you can find, so if you obtain so much median vector in the network, it means that something is missing. Okay, so either this is in the form of a extinct individual or it may be in the form of a unsampled individual. So the major difference between this cluster A and B is that the cluster A is more directly related to the Wuhan outbreak sequence because there is another median vector that connects to the B. So there are two-step difference between Wuhan and B, while there is only a single step between Wuhan and A. So I said that A is more closer to Wuhan, and if you see the network, you find that the haplogroup A or the cluster A harbor more individual or viruses from the Gujarat. So Gujarat has more connectivity with the Wuhan sequences compared to the B. While B, there are more individual or genome from the south, which include Telangana and Tamil Nadu. And another interesting thing is that the viruses from Delhi, they are distributed equally between cluster A and B, all this pink. Okay, so they are equally distributed. They are sharing ancestry with the cluster A as well as with B. Okay, and these all gray color are the genome which come from the NIV Pune, and there is no information available from this in the GISAD database. We call them as unknown origin. You can see here sample of unknown origin here. Yeah, because there is no information available in the GISAD database, but they are also connected to the Wuhan sequence here. You can see here. Okay, and some are connected to haplogroup A as well as haplogroup B. The viruses from our state Maharashtra, you can see here, yeah, this one is connected to haplogroup B. Okay, and so this network will tell you so many important things. Another thing is that you can watch here this another cluster which is coming out from the this cluster B, okay, is further deriving or giving rise to more more derived individuals, and all the numbers on this line indicates the number of mutations which are being accumulated. You can see here this here there are 4 mutations that defines between this ancestral and the derived. So more mutation means that this virus is undergoing or completing some novel mutations which are not there in the ancestor. So this is very important to recognize this rate of evolution in the viruses, which will be which is of great importance in the preparation of vaccine. So this is the very I love this network because there is a lot of hard work behind this, okay, which can be represented in the form of a single picture. So next we will move that how this network uh, can be used in some other study, because I know the theme of this conference is sustainable development, a biological and socio-economic perspective. So in the next slide, I will discuss how this phylogenetic network can be used in social sciences or in humanities, because people are using this network to understand the evolution of languages, or we call as linguistic information, that we will see in the next slide. So phylogenetic is not only applied to genetic data, it can also be applied very effectively to linguistic information. So here in this slide, I would like to share one very recently published study based on the linguistic information. This study is based on the relationship between the varieties of Dravidian language which is being spoken in different part of the Indian subcontinent. You can see in the figure there are some 22 varieties of these Dravidian languages are being uh, distributed across the subcontinent. We only know the four major like Kannada, Telugu, Malayalam and the Tamil, but apart from that, some Dravidian language in the form of Bruhi is also being spoken in a small pocket in present-day Afghanistan and Pakistan. In the far northwest, similarly, one variety of Dravidian language is also being spoken in Nepal, and down here many other varieties. So in all there are 22 varieties of this Dravidian languages are there. So this study reveals that all these 22 varieties they mainly group into some 6 to 7 cluster. If you remember, if you go back to the previous slide which I shared about the genomic data, you will find this cluster A and B and in the data. Similarly, you also find this cluster here also. If you take this cluster, pink color, you will find there are 8 to 9 varieties of Dravidian languages are included, like the Kurumba, Kota, Toda, Tamil, and so on. And you go to the upper side, this blue, the Kolami, the Gada, and the Gondi spoken by the Gond, and the Kolami spoken by the Kolam tribe, also found in the Andhra and in the Yavatmal district. So this is a fantastic tool to understand how languages evolved. What's important here is that the information which is being used here is the cognate. I hope you understand the cognate. Cognate is a word that derived from some root word. Root word are the cognate, and by tracing this cognate, you can find out the relationship and find out which is the derived and which is the ancestral one. I will give one example. In French, bank, and in English it's called bank. So these are the cognate. Similarly, there is one product and creative. So, so if you want to analyze any linguistic information, you have to focus this cognate, and by tracing and by connecting this cognate, we can build network like this. So what is important and interesting about this study is that these studies come out mainly by from the European lab. So like Australia and Sweden, Swedish lab. Of course, the first author Vishnu Priya, uh, she herself a Dravidian. She had two affiliations in this paper. One is WII and another is from Max Planck Institute. So I think by collaboration we can also uh, involve the people from different languages to understand how
these languages evolve. So after building phylogenetic network to understand the relationship between all these virus isolate, our next step was to understand how this virus is actually or this infection is progressing in the real time. Uh, I mean, uh, what is the present, past, and the future trajectory of this pandemic in the context of India? So for this purpose, we use some very hardcore Bayesian analysis, and we use two model here. One model is coalescence constant. We call it as A here. Okay, and here is the plot. And another model we call it as coalescence exponential. We illustrate here as B. So constant means that assuming that the population is constant of these viruses, and in model B we assume that the growth or the infection is increasing at exponential rate. So when we plotted this graph, we find some very diverse and very different information. So for coalescence constant, what we found that starting January, the infection reached its peak at around mid of the February. You can see here in the, and after mid of February, the curve flattens or it reaches the plateau. Okay, so all is well here after mid February. But when we use the second model, coalescence exponential, the things are very drastic and very different from model A. There is a continuous increase. So you can say that in other words the growth is skyrocketing. So this is very alarming situation. And also if you see the current scenario, the number of uh, positive is on increase in our country also. So that's why we need to be cautious and should not take things for granted. So based on this, our two projections. So finally, we reach the conclusion of our study. Analysis of 286 genome from India reveals some very interesting finding and very interesting insight. First is that we identified two main clusters in the present day Indian population, which we illustrated in our phylogenetic network as A and B. And these two ancestral cluster also represent possibility of two main strains which are circulating in the Indian population. Also, our analysis reveals that there is some locally derived subcluster which is being evolving from these two main ancestral cluster. We have seen that some local clusters or subcluster are being coming out or deriving by accumulating mutation from the main ancestral node. So that can also cannot be ruled out. Another interesting thing we found is that the mutation is not constant. Some lineages they are accumulating more mutations because we identified mutation ranging from 1 to 7. Some lineages are gathering or accumulating mutations at more faster rate. So that is very unusual thing. And so based on this uncertainty that local subclusters and varying degree of mutations, the possibility of community transmission cannot be ruled out. This is our fourth point in conclusion. And when we use phylodynamic approach to know the growth of this SARS-CoV genome in India, we use two models. One is coalescence constant, when the population is not being, or the growth of the population of this virus is constant. We find that there is a plateau, but when we use another model, which we call it as exponential growth, when there is increase in the growth rate of this population, we found very high increase in the infection rate. So this is very alarming. If this fits into the scenario, as we already witnessing more number of uh, this positive cases coming out in India. Uh, Very recently, yesterday, I read that in Delhi, in, there was some 4,000 positive uh, COVID cases emerge out in a single day. So that is very alarming, and so we need to take some precautions after the lifting of lockdown. We should not relax and say, "Oh, now lockdown is over. Let the life uh, become normal as it was there." So we need extra precautions during and after the lifting of lockdown also. So I end here with the famous dictum that viruses do not stop at frontier, so human should not either, because as I said in the beginning that these viruses and bacteria, they are uh, dividing, and they are uh, creating, causing infection. Okay, even they are being undergoing some pause, or we call it as dormancy or lag period. It doesn't mean that they are being completely eradicated. So we should be very cautious, and we must take precaution to tackle this or to overcome this pandemic. Now it's time to thanks all those who help in this endeavor, because science is a combined efforts of so many minds. I'm thankful to my past collaborator Ravi Kumar Gandham, Samira, who took one genomic tool course here in Guelph, and who initially aligned all this genome using the muscle on cedar, Ashwin for analyzing the downstream data after the alignment, and I'm very much thankful and grateful to my mentor, Professor Bolding, who provided me an access and in the form of uh, the account, creating account on the high temperature facility, which is available in the form of CEDAR at Toronto, Canada. I'm also thankful to my director, GBSH Amravati, organizer of this conference, and all the participants for patience hearing. Now it's time to say bye. Thank you so much. For any questions, please email me. Bye bye. Take care.